Here, Abu Eid, for joining us as a political analyst and sharing that insight all the way from Ramallah. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Asia. At the APEC Summit, South Korea said that momentum is building in its relations with China. A presidential advisor has confirmed that leaders Lee and Xi have agreed to strengthen ties. Xi has pledged to continue playing a role in promoting peace on the Korean Peninsula. The two countries have also agreed to cooperate on stabilizing supply chains. President Xi has proposed joint efforts to combat online gambling and telecom fraud. He has urged both nations to practice true multilateralism and safeguard the global trading system. He has called for deepening cooperation in emerging sectors, including artificial intelligence and biopharmaceuticals, as well as accelerating the second phase of the China-South Korea Free Trade Agreement negotiations. She has emphasized the importance of strategic communication on mutual trust and managing differences through friendly consultations, describing the two countries as inseparable neighbors. Meanwhile, both countries have signed 7 MOUs, including an agreement for a won-yuan currency swap, signaling a deepening financial and trade ties. Now for this discussion, we welcome Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for joining us again. Good to see you. Andrew, how is the relationship going on between China and South Korea? And how does it impact regional strategy of Beijing and also the relations with South Korea of Japan and North Korea?
Well, let's not forget that not so long ago, I mean, literally days ago, or even less than a day ago, the South Korean president met with Donald Trump, and of course agree on certain protocols or agreements to strengthen ties between South Korea and the United States. Firstly, on things like rare earths, but also on a kind of China containment policy. Because the priority for the United States, of course, is to confront and contain the rise of China. And then, of course, the South Korean president is playing along with that. But now, South Korean president is now meeting with President Xi, and of course, President Xi is putting sets great store on this relationship. This is highlighted by the fact that President Xi's visit is a formal state visit, several days long, compared with only an hour and a half meeting with President Trump. But the whole world is talking about the President Trump and President Xi meeting, and relatively little talk about President Xi's state visit to South Korea. Now, these dynamics illustrate that the world is moving towards a more multipolar kind of mode, because the world's existing hegemon, which is the United States, a hegemon in the sense that it's the largest world economy, it is the most powerful military power, it has the dominance of the US dollar. Originally, it presides over a benign and rule-based trading order, but now this order is now being thrown out of the window because the Trump administration wants make American first. So everything is American first. Other countries' interests are not only secondary, but regarded as much less important. And of course, the President Trump is also levying tariffs on his allies. So this translates into a perception that the existing hegemon, the existing leader, world leader, is unpredictable, is coercive, wants everything for themselves, make American first, and appears less able to call the shots all the time, for example, vis-a-vis China, and appears to be increasingly overstretched in Ukraine, in the Middle East, and elsewhere. Don't forget that the United States has 800 military bases around the world, and then is incurring huge deficits. So this realization that the world hegemon is no longer able to preside over a more benign and a rule-based order lends itself to the formation of a more multipolar dynamics. Hence this meeting and the signing of a lot of deals between the South Korean president and President Xi. This has also highlighted the importance of the largest regional bloc, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, consisting of the ASEAN countries and its main trading partners, including South Korea. And this is the largest trading bloc in the world, consisting of a third of the world's economy and a third of world population. So, and of course, for Beijing, South Korea is a very important neighbor, not only along the South China Sea, but also the peaceful Korea, including North Korea and South Korea, of course, is very important for China's development. So that's what accounts for what's happening now, the state visit and the signing of a lot of deals between President Xi and the South Korean president.
And lastly, what strategic significance does this won-yuan currency swap holds for China and South Korea both?
Well, the important strategic perspective is, of course, not for South Korea to ally completely with the United States to contain China. Because if you look at the map, South Korea, of course, very influential over that part of the South China Sea, and is allying itself with Japan and the Philippines in the South China Sea, together with Australia, the so-called hawkers. And the South China Sea is a very important sea lane of communication with China. So China wants a stable neighbor, a more peaceful South China Sea, and managing differences with its neighbors, and also growing its economy and the economy of its neighbors, and also highlighting the importance of a multipolar world where countries need to respect each other's strategic interests, or rather than just focusing on their own priorities. So I think that that's a lot of important messages in this deal between the presidency and the South Korean president.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Andrew K.P. Long for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, moving on to North America, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has called his talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping a turning point in bilateral relations. The two leaders met in South Korea yesterday, holding the first formal talks between Canada and China since 2017. Carney has stated that the discussions were constructive and had unlocked a new path forward to address ongoing issues between the two countries. Let's listen in.
Yesterday, President Xi of China and I had the first formal meeting between the leaders of our two countries in nearly 8 years. We have to talk to each other if we want to make progress and address issues. We agreed this meeting marked a turning point in our bilateral relationship. We have now unlocked a path forward to address current issues and to build the enormous opportunities between our two countries, including in agriculture, energy, clean technologies, tourism, and cultural exchanges. I have accepted President Xi's invitation to visit China in the new year.
Now, upon accepting President Xi's invitation to visit China next year, the Canadian Prime Minister has actively directed his ministers and officials to work closely with their Chinese counterparts to resolve challenges and explore new areas of cooperation and growth. Now, Carney's comments come as both countries face economic pressure from Washington's tariff policies, even after the recent deal that was finalized between U.S. President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping to reduce trade tensions. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump had announced a 10% hike in tariffs on Canadian goods and terminated all trade talks, following a controversial anti-U.S. tariff aid campaign. In response, Carney has now apologized to President Trump over the ad, however, further adding that while the U.S. is redefining its trade relationships worldwide, Canada still enjoys the best deal with Washington and that it always remains ready to negotiate better opportunities. Now for this discussion, we go back to Andrew K.P. Long. He's a China strategist, joins us live from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, Andrew, for staying with us. Now, looking at this news, it's very significant that these two leaders, although China and Canada has a lot of trade going on, they met after almost 8 years. So what strategic benefits could China and Canada both gain from positioning themselves closer and for China as an alternative economic partner for Canada following tensions with Washington?
Well, Canada has had been a long-term ally of the United States, being the largest neighbor north of the United States, and Canada is the world's second largest country by territory after Russia, even bigger than the United States. It's very rich in natural resources, very rich in energy, minerals, but the country is so vast compared with its population, and it's I think it's beginning to wake up to the possibility of capitalizing on its rich resources with its neighbor across the ocean, which is China, which is a resource deficit country. China needs to import a great deal of resources, minerals, and also agricultural products, energy. And Canada has great deal abundance of these, but most importantly, the trust in its southern neighbor, the world's largest country and the world superpower, the United States, has now been shattered because when President Trump regained the White House, the first thing he wanted to make Canada the 53rd state of the United States. And also levying huge tariffs on Canada. So I think that there is a great deal of disillusionment on the part of the Canadian people, on the part of the Canadian government, including its Prime Minister, that America can no longer be truly trusted, although it doesn't want to break all relations with the United States after all. I mean, the two countries are intertwined in many ways, but it's now trying to explore a more meaningful relationship with China. Not that it's going to embrace China entirely, because the ideology is very different, and then there are lots of differences in terms of politics. But China remains a huge market for Canadian exports, as I said. I mean, agricultural products, energy, green energy, and minerals, and also geopolitically, China is a very good countermeasure against President Trump's coercion. Hence, the Prime Minister of Canada said the way he would like to visit China for the first time in many years. And this, he also highlighted, is a turning point in Canada-China relations. And the dynamics which are outlined clearly point Canada to that direction.
With that, I would like to thank Andrew K.P. Long for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has stated that Washington will be watching China's actions